All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Those of you that are tuning in live, super excited. If any of you happen to catch this on a recording, then I think this should be a very entertaining 45 to 60-minute time period that I get to spend with one of my best of friends, one of my mentors, the best man at my wedding, a guy that I can't give enough credit to for teaching me so much of what I know and for being where I am today as well, which we might be able to dive into some of those things. But everybody, I'm very happy to introduce, again, I'm going to say industry icon, if you will, Scott Pullen. Right? Was that?
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to be here. And one of the nicest introductions ever.
Very well deserved, and it should have been done a long time ago as well. So I'm based on just when we even advertised that you and I were going to be able to spend some time together and go live, seeing all the people that were jumping in on Facebook and, seeing all the stuff. And gosh, I was even seeing on the picture that I had posted that Frankie made for us too. They're like, Scott, big arms. I'm like, yeah, I love it. Right. But
that picture was an anomaly. Somehow the lighting and how I was standing, everything worked out perfectly.
It's all good. It's all good. So Scott, you've done so many things. So I've got a few questions here just designed to take us, really, I'd love for you to be able to share with everybody today a little bit more of your career path. I'm going to ask you some different questions on maybe what you learned and maybe what you would pass on, that kind of thing. But how about if we just start right now today? You working with Crunch Franchise. Can you just tell our audience a little bit more of what your role is with Crunch Franchise right now?
Sure. So officially, I'm the regional PT manager for the Southeast and Midwest. So as far north as Virginia, as far west as Texas, kind of everything in between. That's probably, on a regular basis, close to 90 some odd clubs that I have to deal with. My job is to make sure from beginning, even pre-opening till club is opening, supporting the PT department and actually the club at any level, but mostly as it relates to personal training managers, general managers, staff, whatever and whenever is necessary to help that happen. That's what I do.
Okay, very good, very good. So let's go way back if we can. And I know the Texas boy from at an early age and always had a little bit of Texas in your heart. But Scott, where did you go to school and what did you study?
So I ended up going to school at Texas Tech in Lubbock, Texas. It was only one of a handful of schools that really had a nutrition program at the time. And I knew that nutrition was something important in my life, not because I really cared about other people at that stage of the game, but mostly because for some strange reason, I decided I needed to be Mr. Olympia and didn't want to do steroids, which in retrospect was kind of stupid, but nutrition was going to be the thing that gave me an advantage. And got my degree in human nutrition and dietetics.
Okay, all right. So you kind of alluded to it, but was going to school for that, was that was primarily the rationale was really more for bodybuilding?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a character, and things that interest me, I'm very interested in. If it doesn't interest me, I have a very hard time giving it the time of day. And certain things I was a great student for, other things I was not. And when I started getting into bodybuilding, I was fascinated with it. And I needed to know, I'm one of those odd birds that I needed to know down to the cellular level what the hell was going on. And I figured the better and more thoroughly I can understand it, the more avenues I had to stacking things in my favor and being able to put on muscle. And I will say that even though I never did do the steroids, which it's not a judgment call on what people do or don't, it's just for me, I was a bit of a troubled youth and I was trying to get away from doing drugs. I didn't want to replace it with different drugs. I did end up putting on 110 pounds clean over 10 years. So I feel that I figured something out. Yep. Wasn't all muscle, mind you, but it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. Now, Scott, with, and just because I've heard you talk about it in the past as well, but what else besides more of the muscle gain bodybuilding type goal, you came away with a lot more than that, obviously, as you started getting into your degree and some of the clinical work that you even wound up doing afterwards as well. I know that spurned some different things that led you down the path in our industry, but what did you experience in your schooling that really woke your eyes up to how nutrition affects health as well? I mean, kind of an obvious thing, but I just want to pull it out of you so you can share with everybody.
There's actually a couple of interesting stories. One affected me very deeply, and one made it a bit of a crusade. So I got a job at it was probably Lubbock General Hospital, it was right by the university. Worked in the dietetics department, and I got to know some of the patients here and there, and diabetic patients, renal patients, things like that. And I remember there was an older, not even older, because I was so young, I guess everybody was older, but probably only in his 40s. And the first time I met this guy, he had had to get a toe amputated because he had poorly controlled type 2 diabetes, Hispanic, which tends to be quite prevalent in that segment. And over the months, he would come in again and again, and every time I saw him, he was getting more of his foot cut off. And I was staying a little late one night, and I was making the rounds saying goodnight to some of the patients, and I poked my head in to say goodbye to him, and noticed there was a piece of chocolate cake on his tray. And I worked for dietary, so sure as hell didn't come from me. And I'm like, Mr. Ramirez, what the heck you doing with a piece of chocolate cake? He goes, oh man, I love chocolate cake. And I just remember my brain going, what about the foot? You like the foot? What do I like better, chocolate cake or foot? Well, I got 2 feet, but finding good chocolate cake, and that can be a challenge, right? And I just remember how profound that was to me, that someone's willing to sacrifice parts of their body for the flavor of something, and what a strong connection nutrition had. And even, in my own life, my Nana was an amazing dessert chef. And to this day, I'm on a quest to find even remotely close to her sticky buns. And I've been failed miserably up to this point. But smells, food is more than just nutrition for most people. It's experiences, it's culture, it's history, it's family, it's so much stuff. And to really get into people's dietary habits and try to alter it is a hugely challenging thing. But there is no more single aspect of somebody's program that can yield such amazing results in such a short period of time. From that, then, at the time, because this is how long ago it was, the nutrition program at Texas Tech was in the College of Home Economics still, because it was cooking, basically, right? And I remember I was very vocal, being probably one of the only guys as well in that program, that said, hey, we need to move this out of home ec and put it into health sciences, because it is a health science. So vocal was I at that they actually had a contest, a raffle to win a date for lunch with some other people, I think like 10 people, to win lunch with the dean of the school. And everybody in the nutrition department bought a ticket and put my name on it. So of course I won a seat. And when the time came, Mr. Pullen, you're in the nutrition program, what do you think? And I frickin' unloaded on her. And I'm happy to say, after I had left school, mind you, but probably within 4 years, it was in the health sciences portion of the university. So I was kind of an advocate for change at the time. So much of an evangelist was I.
And out of all these years, I would actually kill to see you. I've never seen a picture of you from back in the college days. I would have to see this, because those of you that know Scott, the dang guy doesn't change. He doesn't age. I mean, it's unbelievable, because you look the exact same today as when I met you outside of the goatee. So I'm like, gosh, I'd like to have seen like probably the crazy hair, everything else back in those days, and this, swashbuckling, getting out of college Scott Pullen. I can only imagine, right?
So here was my attire for my finals, right? I had shorter hair then, because, as a bodybuilder, long hair made you look like you were small, not as big, right? So short hair makes your head look smaller, makes it look bigger. Anyway, it's bodybuilder shit. But
like this. Oh,
better dress.
And the small shirt.
Last day of school, I would wear this shredded up shirt that said, "Kiss my ass, I'm on summer vacation," and the Levi's with all the shreds in the legs, under the butt cheek, the whole thing, quads stretching them out to the nth degree. And of course, turquoise high tops, Converse high tops.
Which isn't too far from the way fashion has come back today. All right. So Scott, you get out of there and then you wind up in our awesome industry. How did that happen? How did you get from Texas to, I'm guessing, is that when you went to Clearwater, Florida?
So I went to Clearwater, and then actually from there was a short spell in Utah, but some things didn't work out. I was on my way to Baltimore. Something fell through. I got stuck in Florida, which ended up being just fine. Ended up first working for the WIC program down there for the health department, women, infants, and children. And I went there just simply to, be a regular person that just did some casework. And the lady that ran WIC for the state had lupus and was going to be retiring. And it sucks that it works this way, but it works this way. Nutrition clinically is, and at least historically was, a very female-dominated thing. And it's not right that it's this way, but just being a guy in nutrition a long time ago, you're going back 30 some years, helped me out a lot. There was a certain implied, I remember people would come into the WIC program and they'd see me and I was nobody. I was entry level. They're like, I need to speak to that guy right there. And they're like, you don't want to speak to him, ma'am. No, that's who I want to speak to. And I'm, all right, they call me up and they'd get nowhere. But the lady that ran WIC for the state of Florida was going to be retiring, really took a shine to me, and she had me on the fast track. She was going to do everything she could to get me in the position of basically eventually taking over that role one day. And it probably would have been a great career, but I wasn't passionate about it because the interactions that I had, I was not dealing with a receptive audience most of the time. Versus what I really like about the fitness industry is here's somebody on their own accord, walked through that door, realized that something wasn't where they wanted it to be, and is open-minded enough to, in many instances, take direction and know that something needs to change, right? So I actually still have it. It's a little yellow pad, lined pad, with a breakdown of, all right, I knew nutrition was what I would have to do. So I had all my formulas to figure out how many calories you need, and I broke down, here's what I would do in the first session with them, second session, every other week I would do measurements. And lo and behold, I started my career at a Gold's Gym in Clearwater, Florida. And at that time, I ran into a structured program called nutritionalysis. And it may have actually still even been sportalysis, to be honest with you, but at least nutritionalysis, Neil's first program that he made for health clubs. And as I read the manual on that, I was like, holy shit.
You said it, but just in case anybody that's watching didn't catch that, what dotFIT is today, actually, that was one of the very first companies as dotFIT was the evolution. We'll talk about some of the companies in between. So this was really, Scott, do you have any idea what year that was approximately?
That was 1993.
Okay.
Yeah. And so as I read that, I was like, holy shit, somebody did all the legwork. There's a computer program, because I can't write code. This, you take for granted computers. We didn't have the internet back then.
Hey, no internet, no cell phones. Yeah.
You wanted to do something on a computer, you had to write code on the spot half the time, right? And, being a science geek, everything was scientifically accurate and valid in there. And I was like, wow, this is good shit. And somebody's put it together. So I sucked it up, and I've always been pro supplement, even though prior to that, most supplements never really worked for me. Creatine wasn't even on the scene yet. That's going to be another 1.5 to 2 years. So that happened. But I did know, and I learned this in a biochemistry class through the pharmacy department. They started talking about drug delivery and how to get things in the body and all that. And that's when the light bulb went off. I was like, shit, if they use delivery systems and drugs, why don't they do it in supplements? I guarantee you they don't, because everybody just shoves shit in capsules. And we probably should have put a disclaimer that Scott cusses. I was hoping I wouldn't, but I am. And so when I started using the products that were available through nutritionalysis, whenever I used something, I noticed a difference. But one of the big calling cards of that program, which shaped the future for everything that we have now, was the fact there were delivery systems. And when I used the program, clients that did what they were supposed to do did amazing, felt great, had huge change. So I was always a very nutrition-centric bodybuilder. And anybody that's known me for a long time, I'd probably say reasonably for my first half of my career, I was known as like the nutrition guy. That was my moniker. I only later did I get more into the NASM and the other stuff.
Yeah. So, hey, Scott, tell us then, because I've never heard this part. So you get to Stewart's Gold's Gym in Clearwater, Florida, which that was one of the meccas of Florida. I mean, it was amazing, amazing club, and especially the era was just amazing at that time too for the gym industry, you know. But what was it like then for like your school when you first met Neil back in the day? So I'm trying to picture you, you know, because when I met you, you were already working for Neil. So
Right.
I'm trying to picture the first time you were introduced to him and then hearing what he says and aligning yourself. So tell us about that, please.
So there's a tricky thing. So one of the classes I had to take in college, and I'm forever thankful for it, was a class on public speaking. And we learned Toastmaster rules and everything. And you know, it's not something that normally comes naturally. It takes practice to be a very, very good public speaker. And without a doubt, Neil was very inspirational. He was exceptionally knowledgeable, influential, all those things. And I had known Kent first, and Kent and I don't think it's a story for this particular call, but we had one of the most epic buddy movies when we first met. The shit that went down is the stuff of legend. But I knew Kent first, and he you know, brought me over to the school, met Neil, and my first meeting with Neil was probably not the best because I critiqued his speaking a little bit. I said, you could probably get away with like making the point and reiterating like 2 or 3 times. But at the time, Neil used to do like 4 or 5. He would beat a dead horse, which I'm fond of saying that one of my favorite things is to beat a dead horse. But I think Kent shared with me later, he said, he's a cocky fucker, isn't he? Oh, there we go. But anyway, the point was I was absolutely enamored with him. Definitely, he was so knowledgeable, and I wanted to tap into that. And I was a huge fan of what he had put together. I was just like, okay, this guy, he's got it. He does it right. And my whole goal was, how can I work for this guy?
Yeah, very cool. So, how did that transition go down from you being a tech, right, out of Clearwater Golds to then working for Neil?
Well, we have a buddy in common, you and I, Mr. Ken Lenhoff.
Yes. And he's actually here in our office today. I'm super excited. I told him to jump in here. I don't know if he will, but yes.
Kent, I owe my career to Kent because I was not a salesman at first. I'd like to pride myself on my sales ability nowadays, but it was not something that came to me easily, and he helped me out immeasurably in that respect. But you know, Kent was my rep, so I'm sure he was looking on paper like, holy shit, where's all these supplement sales coming from? You know, what are they doing at the gym? I used to sell $5,000 a month in product. And so it's tough when I deal with clubs and they go, oh, we can't sell anything and blah, blah, blah. I go, you're talking to the wrong person, man, because as a single human being, I would sell $5,000 a month. So you need to suck it up, Jack, and learn your craft and understand what you're talking about, and you should be able to sell something because it's really freaking easy, right? I can't imagine somebody will follow every bit of information you tell them they need to do, but when you say, oh, by the way, you need to take a multivitamin, they go, yeah, I can't do that. Come on, nobody's that ineffective, right?
Yeah.
So Ken started using me to help because I was such a sciencey guy, and that was nothing that he enjoyed. He was sales and the processes. So he would send me out to do some staff training or send people over to me, and I would do training. So it got me some extra money on the side, which fed my hot rod love. But as Kent would move up, you know, they always say you need to train your replacement, right? So you're not stuck. So I would occupy where Kent was as he moved up, and he was with a group of clubs in Northern Virginia, the famous Kurt and John Galliani, amazing Gold's Gyms up there. When you said that was the heyday for Gold's Gyms, that was a golden time for Gold's Gyms, man. And those guys in Northern Virginia were killing it. So there were 6 clubs they had and a couple from another owner that I came on to oversee the nutrition services for while working part-time for dotFIT for Kent in his territory. And then as he moved out to the corporate office, I took over a full-time role and just little by little moved my way out to California.
Yeah, which might have been around, I'm trying to think now, it was probably 96 when I got to meet you. I'm in this little club in Orlando, Florida, this World's Gym that, you know, was kind of crazy. And I think I was 22 at the time as well, maybe 23, and needed some help with this Apex program. I'd moved from Connecticut down to Florida to run the program in this club. And my new Apex rep comes in, and it's Scott Pullen, this big, loud, just might as well have had one of those big drums that you would see on a drum line walking through the club beating, because everyone just stands and takes notice. And we had the best time. We hit it off from the very beginning. I'll never forget too, because, you know, not gonna lie, I was broke. I mean, I had the change thing that was in my car that I would start looking for, to be able to pay. And Scott comes to town and is like, hey, I'm gonna take it. It was like Chili's or Applebee's or O'Charlie's. It was one of those. I'm gonna take you to lunch. You know what I mean? And that was just amazing. But that started a friendship that's, been quite a long time in the process. But that's when I was introduced to you and Kent, actually, just separately, but both at that club. And such an amazing time there. So we go, Scott, you got Apex, throwing this out there, but I do want you to keep expanding if you would. But
I'm going to stop you for just a second.
Yep.
So two things. One, obviously you impressed the hell out of me when I first met you. I was like, this is a kid I'm going to keep an eye on, and I'm going to throw some good positions in front of him, because he's going to be somebody. And I immediately knew that when I met you as well. And the guy that owned that club, Alex Broman, he's one of the people, whenever I think about buying a boat, I always remember what he said: don't buy a boat, buy part of a boat. So go in with people, because unless you're going to be using that sucker every day, huge waste of money. So a little bit of life skills for you there. Go ahead.
Thank you. But Scott goes on, and I want you guys to know, for Neil, obviously it was a company he created from the ground up, being, like Scott said, from the very beginning with sports telesis to then nutrition analysis, sports telesis, Apex. And this is his baby, just like dotFIT is. But Neil always taught all the schools. And like Scott said too, Neil, one of the things I think most people would agree upon, if you've ever met Neil or seen him, he's a fantastic presenter. But Scott was the very first person that Neil ever entrusted to do his part on the road when Neil wasn't able to do all the demands of the travel, just because, we were blowing up. So he couldn't be in, 5 places at once. So Scott was the first person I go, you know what? He's now teaching the main part, and we've had a lot of presenters over the years. And I think hands down, you are in the top 3 always for saying, like, this person can actually teach and, get a point across, make it fun at the same time, teach me, and it just being able to be captivating. And like you said a little bit earlier when you were talking about the college public speaking class, I mean, it's not easy. Not everybody can do it, but especially when you're trying to make it where somebody's going to pull something out of it and be able to use it and want to come back for more, and it's not a college class that they know they have to sit through for what we want to do. And so you've always been so talented. But I mean, you went from Apex, I know you had some amazing opportunities, even with being a nutritionist for the New York Yankees. Obviously, you worked with the National Academy of Sports Medicine, NASM, for years, being in the clubs as well. Take us through just a little bit more of that, Scott, if you would.
Well, geez, there's a lot. So I think a lot of my time as I've been, people say, there's no such thing as luck. I think that I was around some of the right people, the right place and time, for sure. That is hard to duplicate some of the opportunities we had. And one of those great opportunities was Neil running across National Academy of Sports Medicine and a guy named Tom Purvis back in the mid-90s. And one thing Neil is superb at is spotting talent and opportunities. And he saw, wow, this is an amazing opportunity here, that this would complete the picture. We're nutrition and lifestyle and coaching, now actually getting the absolute mechanics of it. We tag team together with NASM back in the early days, and would present program design back then was a program. So, okay, as the weeks go by, change is starting to slow down. Do I make adjustments in frequency, intensity, type, or time of your cardio? Do I change the intensity of your workouts? Do I change your calories? Do we add a supplement? Every part of the equation, not just the workouts. So we brought that to it, as well as nutrition, basic nutrition, trying to make a more more 3-dimensional fitness professional, if you will.
Yeah.
got involved with that, teaching with them for many years. Rodney Korn became involved with that at one time.
And hey, Scott, hang on one sec too, just for a lot of you that may not know, I mean, Scott's referring to time way before the OPT model and Mike Clark and like he said, Tom Purvis, which so many of us in this industry owe. He, was a total pioneer, back in the 90s with developing more of a system for teaching a trainer how to create an exercise and monitor for good form. And it was really cool because Scott actually became like the sole nutrition instructor for all of these live classes. And that's how the classes were delivered. It was only live. There wasn't any real home study. So Scott was out there heading up that whole part of NASM, being the nutrition portion, if you will.
So
go ahead, please.
Those were some fun days. I mean, those classes used to have 120, 150 people in them. And depending upon where you go, you would always see, we're big old time bodybuilding fans. I remember seeing some of the, God, what was the gal's name? Was it Erica Mess out in Hawaii one time? And, you've seen Jay Cutler. I got to meet Rich Gasperi, stay at his house. Hell, we bought crickets to feed to his pet tarantula, for crying out loud. Met Andrew Dice Clay through. These are some heady times, for freaks like us.
Yeah.
But what stands out though, and it has to be said, is for as excited as we were, and all the time, especially as teachers, sometimes this is terrible to say, but sometimes you hear some stupid questions, and people say, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I'm like, just think about that though before you go, because I've heard some zingers. In the early days, Tom Purvis used to be legendary. If you went to that live course and you weren't prepared, like you never cracked the book and you just showed up and expected to be told everything, he'd blast you. I remember someone asking questions like, "Are you serious? Did you even open the fucking book before you came? I can't believe you're going to waste yours and everybody else's time with that question." And we were like, "This guy is fucking awesome."
Yeah, it was crazy days. And it was almost like back in those days, though, to compare it to today, it's kind of like how you have nowadays on social media, the people that are not afraid of saying anything behind a keyboard. Right. Teaching fitness classes back then, that's what it was like. People had no filter, and they would challenge you on just because they saw results one way or felt something one way that it had to be that way. And I think you would agree with me, though. A lot of that has changed, luckily, in our industry now, especially live. I mean, everybody's so much more respectful, and you didn't get that. But yeah, there were some crazy times teaching, because I mean, you'd have to stand up for what you were representing more than once, So
I've kicked somebody out of a class before. I remember that. I'm like, "Listen, dude, I don't want to waste your time. You don't want to be here, go. I'm not freaking chaining you to the desk. I certainly don't want to waste your time."
Yeah. So keep going for us, Scott. So NASM combined with Apex.
Yeah.
I think around that time you started to get the bug to go back into the trenches again too, and kind of get back into clubs.
There were some things that happened, and one of the things I'd like to say I'm proud of, and I know is a hallmark of you as well. It's one thing to talk the talk, but to walk the walk. And even though I started out in the gyms, it wasn't a lot of time that I had spent in the gyms, and I was starting to get into teaching things that I really didn't have as much firsthand experience on. And I don't like to be that guy that's going to take a strong stand on something and I can't offer up a story, an anecdote, the evidence to say, "Nah, listen, I understand why you think that, but try it this way. Here's what I've seen, boom, boom, boom." And I felt that there was a hole in my plan, and I didn't like being vulnerable that way. And some other things played into it as well. And I'm a gypsy at heart. I'm Hungarian and Irish, so I wander around getting drunk. And I decided I needed to go get my ass back in the clubs and learn the business of the gym business, not just how to train and how to change people, but how to make the business work. And so I started with a group of clubs in Arizona. That was very helpful. I think my old GM, we just talked the other day, it was his birthday. He goes, funny, the 2 days into it, the owner of the clubs called my general manager and said, "So how's Pullen working out?" He goes, "Well, he fired the PT staff." And he goes, "Oh yeah, who did he fire?" He goes, No. He fired the PT staff. I didn't like the attitudes. I didn't like what I was dealing with, and I didn't think I could save them. So I got rid of the whole mess and I started over. And ultimately, that club was not the busiest club in the group, but we had the greatest retention. We did just as well in PT, maybe not quite as high as the high clubs, but we hit our goals, and we did it on probably half to a third of the memberships that other people did. And it was truly like the cheers of gyms. Most people in that gym had a trainer, and they stayed with a trainer, and it was a magical time and a magical place. Everybody had a great time. So I'm forever thankful for that, because I think it made me more valuable. And I think, when I went back to work for Neil again later, he appreciated that I actually had that real life experience to fall back on.
Yeah. Which was that about the time somewhere there, let's just say somewhere there after Arizona, though, when all of a sudden, for those of you that don't know, when Neil had Apex, one of the biggest clients that he was able to get in the mid 90s was, of course, 24 Hour Fitness. And that was just a match made in heaven. You were talking about, Mark Mastroff, the owner, founder of 24 Hour Fitness with Neil. Mark says, I want to have a, nutrition program for every one of my clubs, as they were growing to 300 to 400 locations. So all of a sudden they were together, and then it did so well that the holding company of 24 Hour Fitness actually bought Apex. And then I always say, a few years later, Mark winds up selling 24 Hour Fitness. And, Neil had a little bit of a different vision compared to the folks that bought the company. So, basically wound up leaving. And then when non-competes were up, was able to start this brand new company with the name behind me right now called dotFIT. And I think at that time, Neil was kind of like, I don't know, what was it? The Blues Brothers, Scott, where we're getting the band back together. So all of a sudden, Neil's reaching out to all the originals that helped him put everything together. Is that about, did I paraphrase enough of kind of how that went down?
It was actually that I grew up in San Diego, and we were chit-chatting, and I said, he goes, yeah, I don't know what was going on, but I said, I said, even though I got things going on, I said, I'd always be happy to come back with you. I said, he goes, well, I got some things going on. I'm putting the band back together. And I go, is that what I think it means? He goes, yeah. And I go, well, I said, if you could find a place for me, I'd be very interested. He goes, oh, I do. He said, you're my first employee. I need you to start in May. I was like, okay.
Fantastic. So then Scott helping with Neil and so many others with continuing on, like we like to say, the mission. So dotFIT formed, what was that, 2008, I think. So 2008 with dotFIT, and then had a great run launching off the program with us. And then I think, again, as you alluded to, the gypsy life sometimes like to do some different things. So did you wind up going from there? Is that when you went to work with Angel and Willie at Gold's SoCal?
I actually left the industry for a little bit. And I will say that particular time was precipitated by a overuse of Ambien. Looking back, you're supposed to use Ambien, just so if anyone's an Ambien fan out there, you're supposed to use it for 2 weeks. Okay, they didn't tell me that. So about 6 months later, when I'm starting to have personality and mood changes, I would leave a training, and thank God I'm introspective, but I would just remember leaving a training, and sometimes we talk about this, Rob, where it doesn't go your way. You have a less than stellar group, and I just remember being so freaking angry and just furious. I'm like, I don't get it. And I'm just beating my head against the wall, throwing myself the road, and people don't care. They're not appreciative. I'm sick of this crap, and I already put the wheels in motion, and I have a bad habit of thinking about what I want to do, lining everything up, getting it ready to go, and then burn the bridge on the other side while I already got a foot on the other side. So I did not put Neil in any position to be able to do anything to keep me, and I had already set all the wheels in motion. And thank God I at least started looking into how Ambien was supposed to work, and realized, yeah, I'm not supposed to be on it for 6 months. And once the fog cleared, I realized I had made a tremendous mistake, hated the fact that I had left the fitness business, and proceeded to work my way back into it.
And then,
yeah, that got me in for another year or so, and then I was had a hard time finding the right fit. Did some time with Core Performance, which was an offshoot of Athletes Performance. Very interesting group, but it was a little bit of a square peg in a round hole fit with me there. They have a tendency to be very much, a lot of athletes, former athletes, and there was a certain kind of this, gym people snobbery going on that I was like, listen, son, you ain't been around long enough in this biz to be looking down your nose at me. Learn a little bit first. But we parted ways very amicably, and did some stuff. And then I thought I was going to be out of the business again because I wasn't finding a good gig. And then I got the call from the whale. It finally landed the whale. We have always, through Apex and all that, been trying to figure out how to get our foot in, like really get our foot in with Angel and Willie at GG SoCal. Yep. And here was an opportunity to go there, went out and looked at some of their clubs. They were having some problems with client retention and member retention, identified some issues and shared with them what I thought was going to be a solution, made a bunch of unreasonable offers. They met them. And before you know it, I'm moving out to California again.
Nice. Yeah. And as you know, if you've ever had a chance, if you're ever here in Southern California, you do have to make sure, stop by any of their facilities. They're all gorgeous.
Oh, absolutely.
I know that they win awards every year amongst the Gold's Gym group for, nicest clubs, and they just do a phenomenal job. They have a great reputation. So it was great being able to see you back there. And, and again, so then as things change, then you have a new opportunity, which you're in now. Yep. And being able to work with Crunch Franchise. So it's pretty awesome just to see just this career. And I hope those of you that have had a chance to listen or are listening, it's a small world. Don't burn bridges. There's some phenomenal people out there. Not everybody fits everywhere. So just got to find the right seat on the right bus, right? So Scott, how about this? With all your experience, everything you've been through as well, and from corporate clubs to franchises and everything else, what would you say for anybody that might be watching that either is maybe a manager that's looking at hiring or maybe a trainer themselves? Give us like 3 to 5 qualities that you think are necessities that go, you know what, if you're going to be a great trainer, this is what you really need to do. And that is wide open to you too, Scott. So I'm not saying like it has to be like you have to be great at knowing how to use the in-body. You know what I mean? So what would you give as some advice?
So without a doubt, and I think whatever you're going to do, everybody's probably heard this one, their dad's told them or somebody's told them their life, whatever it is you do has your stamp on it, right? So if you're going to sweep a floor, sweep that freaking floor with gusto, right? If I'm going to, whatever it may be, do it well. I used to clean out the car wash at a full serve gas station when I was a teenager. And doing that in the winter, spending 2 hours de-grinding something, I did it proper. I made sure that sucker was good to go the next day. That was back-breaking work, and I probably could have half-assed it because I was always on time, showed up, and I was dependable and everything. I probably would have gotten away with it. But if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, right? From a manager perspective, I always say first, hire sunshine, right? From a manager perspective, whoever I'm interviewing, they're putting on the absolute best version of them they can fake or make at that moment in time, right? Because you're not going to show up to an interview and like half-ass it. If you do, then you're already part of the problem. But if I'm having to drag the words out of you, I have to keep the conversation going because you can't do it. You can't smile. You can't perk or seem excited. Even if it's not real, at least put on a freaking face. It's not going to work for you. This business is awesome, but it's a tough business. You gotta be on, right? We know this, that when we're done teaching, we go back when we're out of the public view and we're like, oh, Jesus Christ, that's exhausting, right? Because the member has to always see an awesome you because they aspire to us, whether it's fair or not, it is what it is. Right? They want to be able to borrow energy from us. So you have to be energetic. You don't have to be insane, right? I'm a big, loud presence, but that's who I am. I don't, and so many of us as trainers, we kind of have ADD. So we have an industry built for us. You get to be a little loud and crazy. I know that society tries to beat that out of us when we're young, sit down and shut up. But in a gym, I'm telling you, brother, stand up and make some noise. I will pay you more for that if you can do it. Bring that thunder, be exciting. And be professional, be dependable. I mean, it sucks that I have to say, listen, if you just got your clothes ironed or not wrinkled, look presentable and show up on time and smile, you're already in the top 10% of available options I have for employees, which is really sad. Now, if you can even then move beyond that and deliver whatever you have to deliver with a little bit of excitement, a little bit of theater, think about this. That person you meet today may be person 200 for you. You're the first you they're going to meet. And if you do it right, and you bring the right attitude, the right heart to it, and you focus on that person and what's important to them, you put yourself in a position to change and inspire this person to alter the trajectory of their life forever, where they're going to tell stories about you to people for the rest of their life. That's the moment of impact that you have in this business. And if we can accept that responsibility and live to it and deliver with a smile and some excitement, like, dude, this is going to be okay, boom, 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 and not go through the motions, you'd be surprised at how influential and impactful you can become. So understand that you're not just showing up to do work. Oh, they don't pay me by the hour. They're asking me to do this. Listen, Neil will say it, nobody owes you shit, right? My job was, hey, here's the gym, kid. Knock yourself out. I'm not going to limit how much money you can make. Like, look at it that way. Flip that script around. You have an unlimited potential to how hard you're willing to work, how creative you can get, how hard you want to hustle to make something happen. Now, I don't believe that people should work the shit out of you and not pay you for it. I don't think that's fair. But there has to be a certain thing of, listen, if it was your business and nobody is putting a restriction on you, how hard, how creative are you willing to be to make something out of it? And just think, if you can suffer for a couple of years, I mean, I worked 70 to 80 hours a week my first probably 6 months. And my first couple of months, I made nothing because I didn't know what I was doing. Again, thank God for Kent, because he taught me how to sell. Once I knew how to sell and then I started to test and apply, then everything started going at a nice trajectory. But I had to put in the work. I needed the reps. You're not going to get big without putting in some reps and putting in some sets. You're not going to get good at anything if you don't put in the reps and put in the sets. It doesn't come for free. So have an open mind that, hey, you're coming in at the ground floor because you're certified. Good for you. Big whoop. What are you going to do with it, right? Be open-minded and willing to learn. I don't know how many times people say, oh, well, I got my degree. Oh, well, shit. You must be fucking brilliant then. You got all the answers. I'll just step away and let you figure it out on your own there, Einstein. I got a degree too. I got a master's too. But you know what? I don't really use a lot of that information. It helped me gain a better understanding. It did help my credibility in the eyes of the customer. But listen to the people that are trying to tell you. You don't last long in the gym business without figuring something out, okay? That person that's your manager might be a pain in your ass and you might think they're a jerk and you may not be able to relate to them. But if they're a decent human being, they probably want you to be successful. Because let's face it, if you're successful, they'll do better. Listen, we all make our mistakes and we learn from it. So be willing to learn, be willing to work, and bring a smile and a little joie de vivre to what you do.
Yeah. All right. So, hey, how about this? Now, you mentioned this in your last point as well. So again, with our audience that is probably current personal trainers, might be managers looking to hire, might be members as well, but it's all good. But you alluded to like Kent, who again was another huge mentor of mine. It was kind of cool. He was kind of like our big brother that combined us, right? And he certainly helped me, as you did as well, with sales. And I know that word, for those of you out there that are members, know for us that on our side, that's the biggest thing we have to overcome with our teams, because most personal trainers, the top 5 reasons why they get into personal training usually don't include the word sales. I love to help people, makes me feel, it goes on and on. But sales can be very scary for most people, but especially in our industry, it seems to be. So Scott, if you can, for our discussion and what we're talking about here, what are maybe some of the key takeaways that you can pass on, that Kent passed on to you, to help you get over this hump or this, whatever block that was there, that you go, okay, now I feel more confident about this? What can you add to that?
First and foremost, get rid of the word sales. If you don't like the word sales, get rid of it. To be effective or good at sales, it's nothing more than effective communication. In any interaction you have with somebody, you have the option of being effective or ineffective. Which would you rather be, right? So sales is nothing more than taking the more effective road to helping build a relationship. At the end of the day, we could probably rationally say that 100% of people could benefit from being involved with you as a trainer, without a doubt. Even if you feel like you don't know that much, it doesn't matter. You know enough, and half the time it's just making people asking questions and making people introspective, and they will come to the answers themselves, right? But really what it comes down to, I'm an analytical person by nature. I'm not a very emotional person, even though I seem like it or whatever, right? I had to analyze what has to happen for me to get to a yes. And it should be so simple as saying, so listen, I've gone through all the information you shared with me. You want to lose 40 pounds, okay? You have zero freaking idea what you're doing. You have no chance in hell in doing this on your own. In fact, you failed 46 times. So let's be honest, get your freaking checkbook out, quit screwing around with me and pay me the money. It should be that easy. We can't do that though. So what has to happen is we have to take people through a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. It's almost like a trial. I have to present evidence. I have to make my closing arguments, right? I have to listen to what you say, because at the end of the day, what I'm selling is simply a solution, and a solution on your terms, right? Well, I want to lose 40 pounds. Well, maybe you don't want to lose 40 pounds. You don't want to focus on the weight. We want to focus on health. I told you I want to lose 40 pounds. If you can't help me lose 40 pounds, step aside, Jack, and point me to the guy that can. Don't ruin the chance before you get the chance, right? Somebody has something they want to do. Listen to them. Dive into it. Bobby Cappuccio shared with me early on. Think of a 3-step process. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Very different question. And why is it important to you now? And if you think about it, for most people, that why now is everything. That is the magic button. It's the thing that made them finally take action. It could be somebody made fun of them. Somebody called them a name. Somebody was driving by and threw something at them. They went to go put on some clothes and it didn't fit, or they bent over at a meeting and their pants. I mean, there's a million things that happen that drive you to the point where enough is a frick enough. Why now is everything. And when you get good at tapping in through communication with a member or a person and their why now, then everything I have to do is to satisfy that situation. It is human nature. For me, I would say probably 99.9% of the time, even being very good and skilled, when I present PT, I still get a price objection. It's human nature. Why? Because change is terrifying. And that price objection is the only way, the easiest way that that person can slow things down, not hurt my feelings, because it's not me. It's not that you're not a good person and I don't believe you. I just can't really afford that right now. So they slow things down because, oh shit, what if I don't get to do what I want to do? What if it's hard? What if I fail? So many people have failed so much in their life, they're terrified of failing again. They don't know that it's going to be different with you, right? So we have to be able to tap into that and stay in the game long enough. And I'll say this, that even though somebody may do a good job of presenting, the real magic happens the moment you get the objection. And most people, when I ask them, how many times do you go past no? And they go, what do you mean? Once somebody says no, or not even no, but I can't afford that, how many times do you continue the conversation? Most people are like, I don't know, that's about it. You gave up on them. They might have been going through the process of starting to come to grips with it. And then when you said no, you just let them get out of there. And they might go, wow, he gave up on me awfully easily. Maybe this is not the person that can really hold me accountable. And I liken it to this. I've known a lot of people in my life, not naming names, both friends and family, that have had problems with drugs and alcohol. And most of us, I think, probably, I would say everybody watching this call probably knows somebody, a friend or a family member that had a problem, was going down a very bad path. My question to you is when you've identified that, did you say something to that person? The answer is probably yes. And my question would be, why? And your answer is probably, it's because I care about him. Exactly. And it probably wasn't a pleasant conversation, was it? It was very uncomfortable. So here you have somebody that is killing themselves with food and inactivity, because those are the biggest killers there are, lifestyle. And you are in a position that you've identified they're going down a bad path. Are you willing to have an uncomfortable conversation because you care with this person to intervene? If not, don't be a personal trainer. It's going to be a struggle for you. You're pushing a boulder uphill. But if you're like, nah, I'm going to fricking help this person, and I'm not going to take whatever bullshit they say to me, because that's what people with problems do, is they make excuses. I'm not going to let you make an excuse. I'm going to be with you every step of the way, and I'm going to help you get through this. This will be the best decision you've ever made, and I'm going to fast forward to 3 months from now. You're going to look back and go, Scott, thank you. Smartest thing anybody ever did for me. That kind of belief, that kind of tenacity, that stick-to-itiveness, that I don't know, compassion almost, tough compassion. I'm known for saying things that jog people. And I know that when I say it, it startles them, but then it starts to work in their brain and they're like, shit, he's right. That's what we do. We got to knock people out of that comfort, stupidity, and into a path that is much more productive and healthful for them over time.
Yeah, yeah. And just to piggyback on a few things there, I think in all my experiences, one thing I've noticed with successful, I'm just going to use the term salespeople, is the majority of it is their own confidence when they're presenting their services. Believe it or not, it's actually not knowledge. And I realize knowledge could lead to confidence, but I've seen some people that, in all honesty, BS their way, but they were so confident about how they did it. And the person feels that. And I'll use the example of when you just did that little mock, final statement there, when you were like, I'm going to get you there. There's something about when somebody believes that you believe it, they feel good versus, gosh, I know when I started, I was so dang scared about asking for money because number one, I was broke. And number two, I loved working out. I couldn't fathom that if I had $1,000, I was going to spend it on something I did on my own hours a day. So, I would be like, it's going to cost this much. Does that sound good to you? And they could just see that I didn't even look like I believed in it, right? So it's the confidence. And then I don't know if this helps. I'm just going to throw this out there, but from again, years of trying to put this together, one of the things I noticed that always winds up being a hanging point for most trainers is it's not how I explain how I'm going to help you, but it's kind of that moment of truth when they know and you know that you have to actually tell them how much it is. And that's when most times trainers and myself used to crumble, because I could tell you all day long how I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and get you there. But then when it came time to finally go, this is how much it is. That's when everybody used to get freaked out. And I learned over the years something that helped me, and I try to pass on to trainers. I would actually state how much it was within my conversation, but I learned never finish the conversation on the price. Let them know what it's going to be, so they're still listening, but then go back in and highlight why they are there. And I love the questions that you brought up with, again, another huge friend of ours, Bobby Capuccio, but finding out those things about what they want to do, why they want to do it, and why now is one of the most important questions I was ever taught, because there's an emotional reason why they're there. And Scott, how many times have we ever said in a club environment, if we asked a brand new prospective member or client, how long have you been thinking about this? When's the last time they said, yesterday? The idea popped into my mind yesterday that I want to lose 20 pounds. So I decided to come right down. Never, right? It's always a time period of 3 months to 3 years. So something happened though, that caused them to go, I got to do something about this, right? So when we find that out and then we work that back in, so they're seeing, I always like to say, I always like to go, those of you on the call, there used to be these things that people would read in the morning called newspapers. And there was this section that was the comics, and they would draw these bubbles over people's heads so you can see what they were saying or thinking. And I used to think to myself that if I had the person across from me, I want them picturing in their bubble what that body's going to look like, what they're going to feel like. So they've already heard the price, but let's bring them back to their happy place. And a lot of times that really wound up helping me over the years. But it's amazing though, and it's so great to hear your passion and intensity just even explaining this. I've got some people I know that have been commenting, and Ken Hoover and Arlene and a whole bunch of other people. So I know they're chiming in and I know they're enjoying this. So Scott, hey,
Real quick,
go ahead.
There's two things. One was like you had brought up the time objection, right? And that used to get me, let me think about it all the time. How long have you been thinking about it? How long has this been on your radar? People say, oh, probably a year. I would just kind of look at it, and what leads you to the why now is go, a year. So let me ask you a question. How come I didn't meet you a month ago? How come I didn't meet you 6 months ago? What happened to the point where today I'm lucky enough that our paths crossed, right? And listen, if you're hitting it with somebody, sometimes I get kind of inspirational. I get a little corny. It's right. I go, listen, I believe in fate. Whether you believe in fate, karma, the stars or whatever, there's a reason why my path has crossed yours today. What is it that made you stand up and take action, right? And you lean forward a little bit when you say it, and you change your tone a little bit. And then you brought up something perfect, and we could get into all the very specifics of salesmanship that really, all these 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 ends up equaling a million eventually, right? But it's going to cost you, working with me 3 times a week, right, is going to end up costing you $400 a month. Now, basically what I'm doing for you is this. Every time you come in, I'm going to have the perfect workout ready and waiting for you, right? Every week, or more or less as necessary, I'm going to be making adjustments in your program so that your body is constantly evolving and changing and you don't get bored. Additionally, in my case, I'm also going to cover for the other 23 hours of the day to make sure that we magnify your results in the gym and anything else I need to say. Basically, Rob, what I'm telling you is this. Dude, all you got to do is show up and do the work. I'll take care of everything else. So can we get you started on this today? So the money was there, you saw it, but then I explain what I'm doing for that money. If I just say, boom, here's how much it is, and look at you, you're freaking out. Your brain's going in chaos when you see that number. I've got to take the fear out of that number by letting you know what I'm going to do for it. And then I used to always be a fan of, I go, so listen, all that aside, what I really need to know, and this was actually an old Kent one. At the end of the day, it's going to take 3 things for you to be successful: desire, motivation, and follow through, right? Desire, I believe you have entirely. The motivation, it sounds like it's there. It's exciting. I can't wait to work with you. But ultimately, the follow through, you have to take that step. How serious are you on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being no motivation at all. In fact, you're going to leave and I'll never see you again. Or 10 being so much motivation, I'm going to have to physically restrain you because you're going to rip the shit out of the floor. You're so excited to see these changes. Where are you? They're like, I'm in town. I'm like, hell yeah, you are. Let's do this.
And at this point, while Scott is in the Jacksonville Crunch franchise office, like everybody is like, what's going on? I'm sure right next door. I love it. And like you said, gosh, we could go on. Scott, you know what we're going to do someday here is I got to put together a panel, and we'll get Bobby and yourself. And I don't know if Ken will do it, honestly. I mean, I know Ken doesn't like the camera as much, but some other great ones too. And we'll talk about that topic way more in depth and give everybody their time, because again, you taught me so much, and I certainly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. But hey, man, let's end this with I've got one more question for you here, though, and I would just say, and you've mentioned a few people, and if it's them, then that's great. But in our industry, who's probably been most impactful for what they were able to do for you? And it covers a long career, still going, obviously, too.
Well, without a doubt, Kent had first shot at me, and he taught me skills that enabled me to survive and stick around, right? And then got my brain working. And Kent was always very good, knowing I was analytical. He'd ask me questions, or he would challenge something I said, and I felt the need to be able to prove it with facts. It would make me study and learn more about it, right? When I met Neil, of course, that took things to a different level of what I needed to know as a subject matter expert. And certainly one thing, every once in a while I roll over in the morning and I look at the clock and I see it's 4 a.m. I'm like, Neil's awake. He's at work. One of the hardest working guys there is. It's practically impossible to outwork Neil. That's just really not an easy thing to take upon your shoulders there. It's a great thing to strive for, but it's almost impossible to actually accomplish. His passion and knowing that if you've got the belief there and you've got the knowledge how you can make those things work for you and push through anything because, you know, gosh dang it, you're right. You know what I mean? For the right reasons. Just things I've learned from you exercise wise and other ways in dealing with people. You're very patient with people. You're a very patient educator. I'm very fired up and I go all over the place. A lot of it though is just people, you know, people saying or doing the right things that led me to a lot of self-discovery. I do a lot of, I like to read into things, but I will say in addition, Neil has always believed in me. And even if I wasn't with him, he's gone to bat for me, and I appreciate that. And loyalty is something that I've always valued with him. I valued with you. Anybody that's a close friend of mine knows that loyalty is probably one of the most important things to me. And you know, my word is gold, and that's the way I've tried to live my life in this career. I may not say things pretty, and I may be an ass, but at least I'm an honest ass, you know?
I love it. I love it. Well, gosh, an hour flew by. I don't know about you, but I feel like we could do this for another couple hours, but I think we probably have to take our hour, and I know you've got things planned as well. But man, I thank you so much for getting on with us, especially for, you know, being such a big part of what we are today as well with dotFIT from, you know, way back in the day. You know, a lot of us. I mean, you helped create this path, you know, and never mind me personally as well. But my man, I want to thank you, tell you I love you. Can't wait to see you. My wife says to say hello as well, and you have to say hello to your lovely wife for us. But thanks so much, and can't wait to see you again. Can't wait to get over this dang virus stuff so we can start traveling again and do what you and I both love to do most, which is out there and trying to put on a show for people and you know, entertain but educate at the same time. So thank you, my friend. It's been a great time.
Let me just say thanks for everybody that tuned in, and obviously love you, Rob, and forever and always, and we'll look forward to seeing each other soon. But just if you're a trainer, if you're newer to this, you're having some struggles, what I would always say is this: if this is something you know you want to do, don't give up on it. Figure this shit out. There's enough people out there that'll help you. Hell, I'll help you. Send me an email. Send Rob an email. There's so many people in this business. We have an obligation to help you because people helped us. That's how this business works. And if this is what you want to do, then get out of your comfort zone and learn what you got to freaking do to make it work. Because eventually, when you're an old fart like me and you've been doing this for 30 years, it's second fucking nature. And you'll be awesome at it, and you'll love it, and you'll look back on a career that you loved. And at the end of the day, you got to sell something that people need and want and makes them better, not selling something that just breaks down or goes out of style in a week. So thank you for the opportunity, Rob, and thank you everybody for tuning in, and God bless.
My pleasure. Well said. Take care, okay? Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.